My internet just glitched as I was done.
Oh.
I see a notification there that it seems to be streaming live now. So
wonderful.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Here we go.
I'm seeing it. Oh, that's cool. Oh, this is so meta. This is fun.
So welcome everyone to our virtual workshop for the development and marketing strategy for the Township of North Glengarry. I'm here today, my name is Anne Leduc, and I'm here today with Natasha and Simon from MDB Insight, and I'll turn over this platform to them. They will give you a short introduction on who they are and what this project consists of. And afterwards, we're going to be asking for your participation. Just prior to doing that though, I'm going to mention that since we are on a Zoom platform, for those who do not have their video cameras on or who have called in, you will need to chime up when it's time to give your input, or else we won't be able to see you since the cameras are blacked out or you're on the phone. So please feel free to jump in at any time. Thank you. On to you, Natasha.
Great, thank you so much, Anne. So my name is Natasha Gaudio-Harrison. I'm a consultant with MDB Insight. I'm based in Kingston, Ontario. I've got my colleague Simon Webb here, also based in Kingston. Do you want to say hello, Simon?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, that's me. Yeah, also based in Kingston and working for MDB Insight. I'm a research analyst with the team.
Great. So yeah, we started this project just in late April. It's kind of a funny time to begin a project, which is why we're using so many different technologies to reach all of you right now. Normally, or in the world before this, we would have been in the room together, but we're finding that this is a really great way to gather input regardless. So as Anne mentioned, feel free to just jump in with any and all thoughts, be as verbal as possible so that your voice and name rises to the top on Zoom. And we are also streaming on Facebook Live, so we'll be happy to review the comments after if you have any real-time comments, but there will be a portion of this that will be kind of technologically interactive, which is kind of exciting. So we'll explain that when the time comes, but you can use your browser or your phone to weigh in on a couple of the workshop questions that we'll be going over. So I'm just going to switch over to the next slide. If it works. Okay, so our agenda for the next couple hours for this conversation we're going to have. So we've introduced ourselves, and we'll give you a little bit of an overview of the project and the background of the project, and then we'll kind of go over a little bit of the research we've been able to do so far. We've been digging through all the background documents that Anne has provided us, that, strategic plans, the CIP for United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, the economic development plan, basically anything that could be relevant to this type of thing, we've been poring over. We've looked at some background data as well. So that's what we've been able to do. We've also launched an online survey, which maybe some of you here have been able to contribute to. It's gathering perceptions about North Glengarry, and then we'll have a group discussion, and then we will conclude. So this slide here is a Gantt chart of the timeline of the project. It's awfully large and has some small text on it, so I don't expect you to dig into it too deeply. But this red circle in the middle here is where we're currently at. Oh, I didn't move it. So we're here at the community engagement workshops with stakeholder groups, residents, community leaders, and visitors. We've changed the project just a little bit as we've said, COVID-19 is a weird and different time. So we're just doing the one today, and we will be hopefully doing some in-person workshops a little bit later in the summer or fall to catch kind of the groups of business owners and other stakeholder groups we would like to chat with for the sake of this project. But as I mentioned, so throughout phase 2, we did a bunch of background research. We've got our survey in field. We are currently doing some one-on-one stakeholder interviews as well as this workshop, just kind of speaking to some heavy hitters in North Glengarry, and also speaking to really anybody who could weigh in on, where does North Glengarry want to go? What kind of people do we want to attract? And what do we have to do before we can attract the people that we would like to see in our community? And This next slide is just kind of a more drawn out, well, it's not more drawn out, this is the work plan kind of simplified. So as I mentioned, we're here at the workshop stage of the project. So we've gathered a lot of information so far, and we're continuing to gather information. So to dive into a couple of the things that we have learned so far, there's not too much, and I don't want to do all the talking. I would really like to hear from our participants today. But the two things that rose to the top that we thought were interesting were, number one, North Glengarry is, when we look at median value of dwellings, very affordable. Compared to the median value of dwellings in Ontario, Ottawa, Gatineau, even South Glengarry, the Greater Montreal area, Prescott Russell, we are looking at cheaper real estate. So that really sticks out to us as a value proposition for North Glengarry. And next, as I mentioned, we have a survey in field right now. It's an open survey that is collecting responses on perceptions of North Glengarry, and we're trying to understand, what do people think about North Glengarry? What are its strengths? What are its opportunities? Have they heard of it at all? If they moved there from, if you're a resident, if you moved there from outside North Glengarry, what were the reasons behind that? That might help us understand what do people think about when they're moving somewhere like North Glengarry. So the first question in that survey, if you have answered it, you'll be familiar, is what are 3 words that you associate with North Glengarry? And we made a word cloud out of the responses so far. That survey currently has 105 responses. So that's it's pretty good uptake for how long it's been in field. So this is the word cloud, and it's a fun word cloud because there's a lot of really positive words that rose to the top, and so the ones that ended up that occurred the most amount of times are the biggest ones. So friendly was the number one, and you can see it's front and center and very big. Rural was also really big. Scottish was big. Community, bilingual, home, welcoming, peaceful. So I want to stop and look at the word cloud for a moment. And invite the group to kind of weigh in with their thoughts. Are you surprised by this word cloud, or is it does it seem likely that these are the words that would rise to the top, or any thoughts at all? What do we think about the word cloud? And again, if you want to weigh in, just speak up.
Looking at this, and I have to strain a little bit, I do personally see, obviously, bilingual, but I am shocked that I don't see French in here. And this speaks to me to the fact that perhaps this has not properly attracted the Francophone community in North Glengarry, which, let's face it, depending on what you look at in terms of Statistics Canada and so on, could constitute as much as 40% of our population.
Okay.
At least in the village of Alexandria, but it depends on the unit of analysis. But this to me speaks to the fact that we're not capturing that information.
Okay. Interesting.
Is the survey, and I should know this, but I don't. So is the survey being fielded in French?
It's not actually. It's just in English.
Okay. That may be, in my view, a blind spot.
Sure. Yeah, that's good feedback. Any other observations on the word cloud? All we can move on from the word cloud. Some things that stuck out for us as we went through this were, I think it's really great just how much the value of community and the area's history, safety, all of these things were the things that rose to the top. There's a few much smaller words that occurred probably only once that were things like, if you look a little bit closer, so outdated was one, or old was another. And those are ones that it's sometimes when you do word clouds, there can be a lot of negative words that rise right to the top, but this has been a really fun exercise because it's overwhelming how much the 100+ people that have responded have all had these really positive things to say. So this is a sign of strength to us for sure. And without further ado, we're going to just dive right into the workshop discussion, lest you listen to us talk all afternoon. This is more so that we can all speak as a group and all of you can weigh in on the future directions of this strategy. So we'll dive right in. So first one's a fun one. What are your favorite things about living in North Glengarry? What are some recent good news stories? And if you don't live in North Glengarry, what do you like about it? Assuming you've been there, what are your positive perceptions? And you can feel free to hop on anytime. Again, just speak up if you want to jump into the conversation.
I think one of the favorite things about North Glengarry, perhaps a little bit more closer to pre-COVID, we'll see how COVID affects small business. I do think that we need to, that a positive story is definitely what's happening with our small business on Main Street, or had been prior to COVID, as I said. That's a bit of a caveat because COVID has really hurt our small business. So the entrepreneurial nature of North Glengarry and how critical that is to our community, I think, is one of my favorite things that I've observed.
Okay.
Natasha, a comment has popped up in the chat indicating the people.
Okay, great. Can we all see me typing in the PowerPoint here? I lost share screen for a second there, but I think we have it back now.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, I think there's a comment of people. I see another chat note for the concerts in the grotto and the cafes.
Concerts in the grotto?
Yeah.
GROTTO.
And the cafes.
Okay, I'm gonna open the chat.
While she's typing that in, does anybody want to elaborate on the people?
See the chat.
What do you think is great about North Glengarry people?
So I'm from away from a long time ago, but still considered from being away. So a city girl. And one of the things that I found most unusual was you could be walking down a street and everybody will say hello. So people will cross you and they'll make efforts to be friendly. So definitely there's that friendliness and welcoming, even though you're technically from away.
Great. I'm watching the chat now. Friendly bilingual environment. Excellent. It's definitely an area of strength. Glengarry restaurant. What do we love about the North Glengarry restaurant? the water that runs through it. Okay. So for everybody not able to see the chat, so we're saying that the friendly bilingual environment, the North Glengarry restaurant, the water that runs through it. So the water that runs through it, is that like through North Glengarry?
So it's actually one of the features of the North Glengarry restaurant. It used to be an old grist mill. So
okay.
Is actually sitting right beside where the water flows through. So it's quite lovely. So it's really, I think, the location of the restaurant. It has great ambiance.
Excellent.
And someone indicated Gaetaz also.
Oh, I missed that one.
And that's really, I won't call it quaint because he's expanded quite into a few other locations, but he's a chip truck. And people come from afar to get Gaetaz.
Amazing. Okay. So it's always good to start on kind of a fun note and reflect on the things that we love about our community. So it sounds like there's a lot to love about North Glengarry. It sounds like people are very entrepreneurial, very friendly. Having 2 languages is a major strength. We've got some great places to eat. I'm seeing, oh, there's a nice hospital with a great reputation. That's excellent. Okay. And a really nice park. That's also coming through in the comments. Excellent. So part of this project, well, all of this project possibly, this project is about the development and the marketing of North Glengarry. The 2 sort of need to go hand in hand. So we're thinking about what do we need to develop in the community, and then how do we attract the residents we would like to attract. So the questions I'm about to ask you, we're going to think about, you know, what do we need to do to get to the place where we can attract the types of residents that we want, but also who are the residents that we want? How old are they? Where do they work? What do they do for fun? We're going to ask all those questions. And I'm seeing more notes in the chats about the food scene. So I'm going to put interactive council and the food scene. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to the next slide and I'm going to pose the question, what kinds of amenities or features would you like to see within the community that would give North Glengarry a real edge in attracting new residents? And another way to ask that is if you can't think of any sort of aspirational, what would give us an edge? What would be the additional thing? What might be some of our gaps? What do we need to fill in order to attract people? Okay, so the first comment I see in the chat is better housing apartments.
I think internet has to be at the very top of the list. As soon as you step away from the village of North Glengarry, of Alexandria, and we know it's on the horizon with some infrastructure investment, but it has put our families and people trying to work remotely at great difficulty because you know, the internet is so poor. In some parts, not everywhere, but in many.
Okay. Public water, I just saw in the comments. I understand there was a really major water project in Maxville recently.
We also have better housing apartments. That's popped up in the comments.
Oh yes, I got that one. Are there any other thoughts about housing. So I'm seeing apartments being specified, but can we speak a little bit about housing types and you know, who they're geared toward maybe? And we will talk a little bit more in this workshop afterward about who we might be trying to attract. But are there any other thoughts about housing and the need for it?
Yeah, I think housing is overwhelmingly the number one gap we have. I think we've got opportunities if we can get the lagoon enhancement project. I mean, that's going to be a ways away, but even to develop outside of Alexandria, you know, you've got the opportunity if you're creating houses from scratch to create starter homes that are attractive to young families that are, you know, fairly inexpensive, that they can live in for 5 to 10 years before the upgrades. I think that'd go a long way towards, you know, keeping people here or bringing people back who grew up here and attracting new residents. I think that's overwhelmingly the number one thing is lack of housing.
For sure. Okay. I'm seeing also in the comments, smaller units for 1 to 2 people. I'm also seeing employment and industry of some kind. So that's from Penelope Smith. Penelope, do you want to elaborate on what type of employment we'd be looking at? What type of industry would be best suited, I guess?
Or if anybody has ideas as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'd love to jump in, and I think one of the things that we will see again as a result of this crisis is the fact that more and more people will be looking to work from home and or have a place locally to go and do some work, but not necessarily go into work. So I think a potential amenity or feature is a co-working space where people with poor rural internet can actually go and work there, even though their job might be in Montreal or Ottawa. And I think that would be a strong attraction feature for North Glengarry. There's also the whole aspect of this might be able to tie in nicely to the entrepreneurship piece, because this can be a place potentially where entrepreneurs are in a position to interact with others and where there might be some programming or support for entrepreneurs. And last but also related is the fact that I think, again, because of COVID, more people are going to end up having to be self-employed, or because there's structural shifts going on with COVID, and we're going to have to be more nimble with our work. So self-employment may be on the rise. And again, having a place where we can bring people together to have social support as well as business support would be amazing.
Okay. That's a great idea. Yeah, that's a very holistic suggestion. I really like that one, because it does solve the issue of, you know, if you are in an area where your internet's not so great yet, you know, what are the amenities we could provide? That's really great, very actionable.
If you want to talk about that some more, I've got lots of thoughts on that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we can definitely chat further. Yeah. I'm seeing from Penelope Smith, I'm seeing a comment, but are most newcomers to this region retirees? So we're going to discuss that in the next few workshop questions, because I think we would like to have a discussion about who we would like to attract, and that's what I'm going to get into next. So the first the first question I have is about where we're trying to attract people from. Where do they currently live? And I'm going to stop sharing my screen temporarily, and I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Simon, because we're going to do a bit of an interactive thing with this question. I'm going to have everybody vote on the age bracket that you think that our best prospects for new residents are. So Simon will be sharing his screen.
All right. So basically the way this works, you'll go to the link right at the top there. If you can't see it, and the bar is blocking it for me, but I think it'll go back down. And then you type in the code, and you can go there either from a computer or from a phone or a mobile device, and we can sort of rank different options, and we can see them pop up in real time. So it'll be a fun way to get immediate feedback here. I'll give everybody a moment though.
Yeah, and the list we have generated here, we kept in two when we spoke with the Community Development Committee yesterday afternoon, and so options 5 and 6, Manitoba and the Prairies, and then 6, Southwest Ontario, were ones that came out of that discussion. So you know, feel free to rank these options as you will, but feel free to pop in the chat or speak up if you can think of any other places that people might move to North Glengarry from.
And Natasha, just in case there's some confusion as to why those were added, it's because we've seen an influx of the Mennonite population over the last few years. And when we've spoken with them, those are the regions that they identified coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, thank you, Anne. So has everybody been able to, where's my chat? Has everybody been able to get on menti.com, MENTI.com? Oh, there we go, I'm seeing some votes. Excellent. So it seems like we're all in agreement that our best prospects for new residents are in the neighboring kind of much larger urban areas. And that makes a lot of sense. You know, you've got 2 major cities right next door that provide employment that are also bilingual cities. So this validates what we've seen and what I know the Community Development Committee sort of had hunches about, for sure. I'm seeing a comment in the chat about how with COVID people are looking to leave cities, and that's an excellent point, Doreen. We've been thinking about that a lot, and even going into even at the project launch, we thought, my gosh, North Glengarry has such a great opportunity here, because if you could live in a low density place, in a rural place, and work remotely and not be living on top of each other at a moment like this in a public health crisis, that's a great thing. And Doreen also says, not difficult to isolate here.
It's great. There does seem to be an acknowledgement of the Southwest Ontario as a real option as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Southwest Ontario is certainly a populated place, and depends on what part of Southwest Ontario we're talking about, but Southwest Ontario can get quite expensive. So, you know, maybe the value proposition is come to North Glengarry, it's cheaper. You can still live on a farm, have the lifestyle that you're used to.
I think one of the links here also that I'd like to add is wherever they are. We talked about come, you know, from a ways, and I'm one of those here. But there's lots of our kids have moved away. And I've seen in some families, the children in their 30s, 40s are moving back. And if we offer them amenities to be able to continue their work professionally or entrepreneurially, they can come back and take care of their parents. The grandkids can be closer to grandma and grandpa wherever they are, whether in their home or in the new proposed housing development that we may be looking at around the hospital. And I think it can increase our community cohesiveness to such a greater degree. So I think that's an aspect of bringing our kids home that, again, with COVID, I wouldn't be saying this, 4 or 5 months ago, but now with COVID, there's a little bit more of, lots of our kids moved away because they couldn't wait to get away from the small town. And now possibly the small town is not as bad as what they've encountered in some of the larger cities.
Right. Of course. Yeah. That's an excellent point. I mean, gosh, even my husband and I have thought about that every once in a while. I mean, we're just in Kingston. That hasn't been too bad here, but it's definitely been at the top of everyone's minds, and that's an excellent point.
Yeah, I see.
All right, let's.
Jackie, in the chat, Jackie says, I wouldn't use the word cheaper. You're right, Jackie. I think it's.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just the expense aspect. It's possibly the community and just easier being closer, etc. Knowing. I mean, my dad is in the Eastern Townships, and the stress of not being able to see him or be close, or if something happens, never mind COVID, I think that's something we need to be thinking about as a community.
For sure. Okay.
Yeah, I guess it's really like not so much cheaper, but the value of what you get for your money, which I'm sure.
But still, hello, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry I came in late. I had another little meeting, but one of the big things, and I know you probably discussed it, was the internet. And if you want, as Doreen said, some of these kids who are moving away. I know both my kids are now working, in an industry that they were able to do some of their work remotely. One is in London and the other one in Ottawa. They would not have been able to do that here at all. And that is huge. And as much as we hear about the government wanting to solve this problem, it's a lot of talk, and there's not very much of a solution for it. Regardless, even if you're ready to pay for a solution, the solution isn't good. And I mean, I know, Doreen, you're my neighbor. I don't know what kind of internet you've got, but I seem to be living in a hole. As soon as I walk away from my window with my phone, I lose signal, so the issue there is that I'd like to be able to work from my home, but I've had to drive into Alexandria every day during this, just so that I can get wired internet. And that, in my opinion, to attract anybody, okay, because you're gonna, as much as you're gonna want to attract some folks from, the older generation, you're gonna want to attract a younger generation, a new tax base, and who are gonna want the, certain amenities. They have to be able to basically, work with a certain comfort that they know. And my younger son says, he says, why would I move there when I can get 100 megs down and blah, blah. He says, I wouldn't be able to do, work remotely. He works for Corrections Canada. And he says he wouldn't be able to do it. There's no way. So for me, it's important. It's at the very top, in my opinion.
I think there's been some recent good news on that front, though, with Xplornet. Maybe Anne or Tara could probably talk to that better than I could, but I think there's some good news on the way.
Sure. So we actually had a presentation at council, and there's going to be a $25 million investment to bring internet to new towers, actually wiring directly to those towers. And I'm not up on all the technicalities, but it's going to be covering I would say 98% of North Glengarry. So it's a $5 million investment from the government and a $20 million investment from Xplornet.
But the tower, what happens is the towers, a lot of these folks, I mean, I don't know if East, you know, if Xplornet or Eastlink or whoever, what happens is that some of these folks, some of us are living in houses that are surrounded by trees, and we don't have direct line of sight to these towers. And even though, you know, I know that some folks who are living in, you know, in some things, in some parts of Glengarry, who are living on a proverbial hill, they have a decent line of sight and it works. But anybody who you know, ends up in somewhat of a little bit of a valley, zero. I mean, Xplornet's been, every time an Xplornet's had this little bit of new technology, I've asked them to come to my place, and if, you know, they say, oh, now we're in Apple Hill. So boom, we try to point towards Apple Hill, nothing. Try to point towards Maxville, nothing. Towards Alexandria, nothing. And so,
sorry, just for the sake of the conversation, so we can keep things going, I'll be happy to share with you the map that was presented at council last week, and maybe we can take that part of the discussion offline, and, you know, definitely share with you the contacts for Xplornet. I think you might be surprised with the scope of the project.
I would hope so, and I would hope that, but again, you know, I know with Xplornet, their service is never, not even close to being to what the cities are offering. That's the other thing too. We seem to be 5 steps behind.
So what I'm hearing is that it sounds like our best prospects for resident attraction will be from these surrounding urban areas, but we want to make sure that we have the internet infrastructure that'll allow people to work remotely, to make it a real viable option.
Yeah.
So excellent. Okay, so I guess we can move on to our next question. And Simon, I'll just let you go to the next Mentimeter slide. So we've thrown out some age groups, and we actually posed this one to the Community Development Committee yesterday, and we've altered our age groups just a little bit to reflect some phases of life that we discussed. But again, it's not a real science, and I welcome your thoughts on what these demographics and, you know, these age brackets would represent in terms of who we might be trying to attract. And as you think about who we're trying to attract in terms of new residents, there's kind of 2 ways of thinking about this. There's who is most likely to move here, but who do we want long-term? And I think that's a valuable conversation to have concurrently with this discussion. So, you know, retirees can be a really, really great way to get new people in the community and see some short-term growth. But young families are also, you know, they'll be there a long time and their kids will go to schools, et cetera. So just think about that. And, you know, these middle phases, think about what people might be doing with their time and their money when they move to a new community, and we'll go from there. So it's interesting that 20 to 29 just rose to the top. I know we only have 2 respondents on the Mentimeter so far. But that's interesting. Okay, so 30 to 44. So we're thinking about young families here and young professionals. Okay, so yeah, that 30 to 44 range is that's rising to the top for sure. So, okay. So I guess we can pull up, whose comment was it? We were discussing retirees, and we had a comment earlier, are most newcomers to this region retirees? So this is a good time to have that discussion in terms of age bracket. So it looks like we sort of agree that our best prospects are sort of that 30 to 44-year-old young family age. So I'll open the floor to you guys. So why has that risen to the top for all of you, for those that ranked that first? What's behind that?
Well, I feel that if you have a community with stores that have services to offer, folks, you know, as you say, with young families, will have the need for services and for goods, and will have needs for some stores, which will actually sort of keep that community. If you don't have the needs for those services, you know, for folks who are retired and who just basically buy groceries, but who don't need, you know, toys, or who don't need, you know, kids' clothes or whatnot, then there will be no need for those stores, no need for those businesses, in my opinion.
Okay. So young families are good. They make the economy go round, sounds like.
I think they do. And also it can be kind of a concurrent strategy, because as we're trying to, you know, grow our businesses and the services we offer, if we're attracting a greater number of retirees or people approaching retirement age, 50 plus, let's say, we need younger people to take care of them. And it's not just at the hospital, it's other services ranging from massage therapy and acupuncture and foot care and so on, as well as community activities. So it's kind of a concurrent or dual strategy. If we're going to go after retirees, we better make sure we have the personnel to take care of them. And go back to bringing, you know, attracting the kids of those retirees, as well as others who might be able to both have a practice here, and their spouse or partners may be able to have a business or work remotely. It's all connected.
Great. Once again, I like your holistic attitude. Any other thoughts on these age brackets that are emerging?
Doreen, I see your comment here as well. That you said, I think we might be wasting a lot of time, a lot of energy attracting 20-somethings that they may need to gain experience and sow their proverbial wild oats. And think a small town may be too boring. Does anybody have anything to add to that, or any ideas there?
I mean, if you're saying, I don't know if it's, they're about to have families too, if the 20-somethings. And the thing is that, you know, I don't want to harp on the internet thing, but if they can actually work, if something like this happens and they can work from home, even from government jobs and whatnot, I know for a fact that, you know, living out in the country, I was able to go outside and not feel the same stress as a lot of these folks in the cities. So a lot of these kids who have moved away will realize this, that, you know, they will say that, you know, well, my parents are there out in the open and they're fine. And they will realize that if we provide the means for them to be able to work here, I think that they will see that, you know, after a while, let's say that especially right now, when you see that they can't go to movie theaters anymore, and there's a lot of these things where all of these huge festivals and whatnot, which were an attraction before, they sort of become an anti-attraction. Now the new normal has changed, and they're going to want to embrace this, you know, maybe the more rural life, the younger generation. They might do that right away just by seeing how, you know, I know that some of these folks, they felt stuck. They felt they had cabin fever. And here they wouldn't feel like that. So.
For sure. Thanks. Yeah. I'm seeing a question from Jackie. Who are the people that are likely to move here now? So without having, you know, a stringent sample size of a specific survey or, you know, solid market data of everybody who moved there in the last 5 years and exactly where they came from, I can say that what we actually heard even just yesterday was that it sounds like there's quite a bit of demand for housing in Maxville by young families. It also sounds like retirees are a major market. So those are the demographics that we've heard so far, are very likely to move to Maxville now. But this project is also really about kind of controlling our destiny a little bit and saying, how do we make ourselves attractive to the types of people that we actually really want here? So there's the who's likely to, and then also who do we want and how do we set that up? Comment from Dean, the 20 to 29 age cohort may be the most difficult to draw in, but they would potentially have an outsized value. So that has to be factored in to how much effort we put into attracting them. Okay.
What I think is interesting to build on Dean's comment is that certainly we can widen it. The 20 to 39, 45 somethings are the ones starting new businesses. And if we offer them strong internet and the right environment, then we can attract them increasingly. And it's a quality of life as well as quality of work basis. But I can't emphasize enough that we'll never know, and we can assume a whole lot of things, but unless we interview and talk to people themselves as to why they've come here, or why they would want to come here in those various age groups, we're just assuming stuff, right? We've been here for a while. So as a side quick anecdote, if you'd want to interview, I know of at least 2 couples through our local curling club in Alexandria who moved from Quebec. Actually, one from Toronto, one from Quebec, but they both have Quebec roots, 2 different couples. And they bought properties here and they absolutely love the lifestyle and the balance. So, and they're in the loosely 45 to 55 group. So they straddle 2 age groups. So if you want, I can ask if they'd want to be interviewed, but you'd want to talk to them as to what made them buy a property and invest here and actually have an absolute ball.
So we do have actually, we were going to use this opportunity on Facebook Live to promote the online survey that we have open. So the findings of that survey have shown us that North Glengarry's affordability has really risen to the top as a #1 reason why people moved there, aside from having familial ties. Familial ties was massive, but it's affordability and rural lifestyle were really things that people reflected, you know, yes, that's why I came here, and that's why I would like to stay here. And safety, community safety was a big one too. So we do have those metrics, and they're kind of in field right now. I'd also, if you can send that link, and I'll send you the link after this if you don't have it already. But share that link widely, because we're still collecting responses. And if you know people who are new to North Glengarry that should be filling that out, we'd love to get that data in there. So excellent. So I'm just kind of catching up on the comments here.
Natasha, interject. We're also doing one-on-one interviews. So if there's anyone that you feel that would be a really valuable resource, I might bring an optic that we might not consider or we may have missed, please send their contact information to me directly, and we'll be able to get in touch with them.
Yes, absolutely. That is that's an excellent point. That yes, we would love to have one-on-one conversations, and we have many to have. So wonderful. All right.
One thing to comment: 2 houses were sold last week, and both people came from Montreal. 2 houses were sold in Alexandria, and both residents came from Montreal. So that's, you know, that we are attracting from right away directly in Montreal.
Okay. So we're going to go to our next who are we trying to attract question. So we've discussed roughly how old they are, but Simon, if you want to go to the next Mentimeter question, what do they do for work? We've got a few categories here. Feel free to also open up the discussion about, you know, if there's any categories we missed. But we did try to cover as much as looking at kind of some labor force information that we pulled for North Glengarry, and also understanding that there's lots of public sector workers, and we tried to kind of catch government, healthcare, and education in one bucket. So feel free to vote on this one and we can have a discussion about it.
There's a question about making the text bigger. Not exactly sure if we can.
Oh yeah, it does get smaller when you have a lot of options in there. I can read them out as well.
Do they pop up on the screens as people
as
are
you're
doing
voting?
them?
Yeah. That was a question from Isabella Campbell.
Just an observation that you, in the survey, you're making the assumption that an entrepreneur is always looking to open a brick and mortar business. And again, in this context, I think that's a fallacy. More than half of entrepreneurs are looking to actually open virtual businesses or businesses that they're service-based. They are not brick and mortar based.
So that's captured by remote worker. So that would be a solopreneur, as we sort of refer to them. Yeah.
I hadn't quite caught that. Okay, thanks.
Oh, that's an excellent addition, Tara. So manufacturing, we haven't indicated on this list. Our industries will be hiring trades professionals in fairly large numbers over the next few years. Okay, awesome. So that's very good context. Simon, should we add manufacturing?
Should I add it in? I was going to ask. Okay.
Yeah, maybe we should. Sounds like it.
So I can do that right here. Okay.
I think you just go back to present.
So I believe you can re-vote. Unfortunately, the text just got smaller, not larger. But
I don't know why I'm surprised that we're thinking a lot of them will be entrepreneurs looking to open a brick and mortar business, but
maybe it's not who's the most likely. Maybe people are thinking that's the best prospect or the people we should be trying to attract. Does anybody have anything to add?
I don't see brick and mortar businesses being very very popular to open. They're quite costly to run, and people, as Doreen said, people are trying to try to either services or being able to online sales, virtual stores, a lot of these things where they don't even need to carry the stock. Do some drop shipping, things like that, Amazon-ish type of things.
Okay.
To build on Alain's comments as well, it's interesting that there might be a distinction to be made. The entrepreneurs that open a brick and mortar business, especially when it contributes to the lifestyle of local residents, they are more valuable, in my opinion, and it's based on a little bit of research in that regard. They're more valuable to the community. So, you know, we've named already several restaurants in our conversation, whether it's the North Glengarry, the Quirky Carrot, La Buvette du Marché, La Belle Sorel, they have brought a better standard of living, a better quality of life to Alexandria than possibly would be reflected in you know, if you just look at it from an economic revenue standpoint. So they add to the lifestyle, and that's what makes a small town more vibrant. And along with that, things like, you know, art galleries and what's happened with Priest Mill glass blowing, it's been an attractor from a tourism point of view, which we haven't talked about. And I realize that tourism is going to be one of the last things that recovers from COVID, but local tourism from Eastern Ontario, Montreal, Ottawa, that's what begins your search for real estate very often. So again, looking at it holistically, the value of a Main Street business to the community is much higher than just its revenue might suggest. So as an aside note.
Sure. For sure. Thanks, Doreen. I'm seeing a good point about childcare service within the area. Will be in demand for professional families and single parent households, especially. Okay. So this kind of gives us an idea of you know, what we think that our future residents might do for a living, these prospective people that we might want to bring into the community. And I know we've had a lot of conversations about remote work. So I'm not surprised it rose to the top. And I think that's a really valuable conversation. And Doreen, to your point, I think the idea about an entrepreneur opening a brick and mortar business to bring more vibrancy to those main streets, you know, and even if it's not a restaurant, you know, even if it's a finance and insurance business or, you know, a professional kind of adding value to those standing buildings in the downtowns. These are important things to consider as well. So that just paints a picture. I should also mention, and sometimes I forget to mention this when we use Mentimeter. So the numbers that we use on Mentimeter are not meant to be hard data. They're meant to give us a sense. And it's about the conversation that we're having, and it's about kind of the overall sense that we're all getting just from being able to rank these ideas. So I might move on to the next one, and this one's kind of fun. I know we had fun with it yesterday. What do our future residents do with their free time? And this is also a question that goes into what do current residents do with their free time? But we're trying to paint a picture of who these people are that we're targeting, and for the marketing portion of this strategy, this is kind of good context. So what we do when we develop a marketing strategy is you develop personas of the type of person that you're trying to attract. So, you know, you're looking at their age, you're looking at what they do for work, what they do for fun, do they have kids, don't they have kids, where do they take vacations, these kinds of questions, and you develop sort of this picture of who this person might be. And that's how you know who to target. So we had a little bit of fun brainstorming, you know, what potential residents that would be attracted to North Glengarry, what would they be doing with their free time? We made some additions based on our conversation with the Community Development Committee yesterday as well. You know, feel free to have at her with the voting. And also let's open up the floor to just have a roundtable conversation about what is fun about living in North Glengarry. Okay. Oh, I'm catching up in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, well, people are voting. I see a couple comments about like a transportation system, which might apply to like an earlier question we talked about, like amenities and infrastructure.
Absolutely.
also a note, these comments are really great. Like keep them coming there, and we have a record of them. So we'll definitely keep looking into them.
Yeah, we'll keep them. We're definitely taking good notes on every input from this technology. So I'm seeing that agricultural tourism is a fun activity. I think on the Mentimeter that might fall into kind of driving tours and sightseeing, but I think to Patricia's point, there's some really unique things to do in North Glengarry in terms of agricultural tourism. So that's worth kind of rising to the top. Leisure activities is first. Okay. Okay, and I'm seeing input about important to have French public school board and English public school board transportation options within Maxville. Okay, so that's a good note that we can take about kind of some infrastructure needs and some gaps to fill potentially. Okay. All right, so we've got 7 votes on this. So leisure activities, curling, golf, etc. So anybody in the group into curling? I really like curling. Is that a big activity in North Glengarry?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful.
and,
cool.
And that's where I've met several of our newcomers that they weren't curling, but they started curling because after they moved here. So yeah.
Yeah. Actually, curling is one of those things that, in my experience, when I have moved to new communities, it's the curling. That's how I meet people. So I can relate. Okay, lots of good votes here. Music and cultural events. I know in terms of arts and culture, North Glengarry is quite the sort of destination for, I guess we had a conversation with the Community Development Committee yesterday about sort of the unknown sort of arts treasures in North Glengarry. I'm seeing some notes about soccer being #1 social activity. And that tracks. So third place here, we're seeing that family-friendly activity, so junior league sports. You got to think that if you're between 30 and 45, as to kind of echo another comment from yesterday, that if you have kids in sports, you don't have a lot of free time. So cricket is big in cities. We could host that once in a while. I'm just reading off the chat here for those on Facebook Live or those not watching the chat. The Dome is a great spot for lots of people, seniors and kids. Excellent. And so a note about golf greens are having challenges attracting new members. So not to only speak from my own experience. I know that my colleague Simon likes golfing. I think you like golfing, right, Simon?
That's true. Yeah. That's a valid point there. No, but I do think there's more people sort of around late 20s, early 30s getting into it, at least from personal experience. I don't know.
My association with golfing is that it's for dads. My dad specifically.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I do think there's a bit of a resurgence there.
Yeah.
How is the golf in the area? Is there lots of options or?
Yeah, great question. So tell us about golfing in North Glengarry. What are those assets like? Or did that rise to the top because of curling? Seems like it might have.
One of the things that well, of course, you know, being a musician and being a cultural person, I strongly believe that there should be more, a bigger variety of music and cultural events. I mean, what happened is we had for many years, we had a stage which went through all kinds of incarnations of being good and no good and difficult to manage. And I really do think that having a place where people who are ready to organize concerts could sort of set up, you know, a little bit like the band shell in Cornwall, which is actually, as opposed to having a stage up, the band shell is very low. And where our stage was in the park actually has that same sort of, would have that same sort of placement if we actually sort of thought about putting sort of a band shell down there that we could even close off, I mean, for vandalism or whatever purposes. And people could actually do shows there, not big shows, but, you know, sort of shows, because it has sort of a little bit of an amphitheater situation. I'm a strong believer that no matter who you're going to attract to your town, you have to be able to play where you stay. That's so important, you know. Mm-hmm. That's huge. Whether it's a drive-in theater or you know, or you know, as you know, organized sports, or everything that's on this list here, and that is so important. And then when people do have, when people are ready to actually sort of put on a festival, the township should be there to say, how can we help? In the same way that, you know, whenever, for example, Mark Monahan from Blues Fest does his Blues Fest in Ottawa, and the city is there, and that's what they actually say is, how can we help? As opposed to saying, well, that's not going to work, or that's not going to work, or there's insurance this, or there's things that you have, you know. Sometimes it's helping the person to put on these events, because there's a lot of people who are ready to do some of these things. But yes, I would definitely say look into a band shell. You know?
Excellent. And that actually, I think you were the one that showed up just a little bit after we started. One of our first questions was kind of, are there any amenities you think would give North Glengarry a real edge in attracting new residents? So it sounds like band shell, or, you know, something to host these kinds of cultural events in kind of a more central, coordinated way.
Yeah, and nowadays the great thing with all the digital lighting and all these things, and the speakers being much smaller, they can be locked up. And, you know, somebody who comes in for, you know, somebody who will come in to host an event will have their own soundboard. Okay, they can plug into whatever. There's and same thing with the lights. The lights don't need to be taken down all the time. They could be hung. And then basically when the band shell is closed up, it's closed up, you know.
Great. All right, thanks for that. That's, yeah, excellent. I'm catching up on the comments section here. Just want to make sure that we capture. So some more great notes about curling and the value of curling to the community, which I think is amazing. I'm seeing, so yeah, the Glengarry Golf and Country Club. So that seems like a great asset. Skill development options for youth is very beneficial. So we're looking at a lot of junior sports here: soccer, goalie clinic, lots of soccer things. Cultural music options are a gem that attract a lot of community participation of all ages. So Highland dancing, youth piping, choir, drum lessons. Okay. Yeah, so these are all great things. Some of the games or events, if we could sponsor intertowns or some cities, could help with more interest for future business owners or residents. I know some of the people who are in some of the music industry, concerts and sports who may get interest arranging the events if we're able to provide them some avenues and a place to camp or live for a day or two. Okay, so facilitating more of these kind of interactions with music and cultural events and things like that. Excellent. Okay.
Can I just pipe in, Natasha? One area that it is right in the middle of the scale right now is shopping farmers markets. And again, something that has come up with COVID is the whole aspect of food security. And we're so fortunate here in North Glengarry in that, I mean, you can grow your own food if you want, but we also have 2 great little farmers markets in Alexandria, as well as in Maxville. We have a, you know, decent grocery stores, etc. But the whole aspect of being able to access our food locally. So especially, and I know it's happening not in North Glengarry, but north of us with Prescott Russell and the food processing hub that they're going to be creating. I think that overall is going to strengthen our ability to feed ourselves and not depend on huge meat processing plants elsewhere in the country that were shut down, for instance, with COVID. And I think more and more there's a consciousness, especially amongst young people, as to where their food is coming from, how is it prepared, and a greater willingness to support farmers. And the whole aspect of food security that is created around that, I think is hugely important. They will pay more and they will go out of their way to, you know, gather that. I think this is something that's going to gain in popularity. Again, COVID-based, but also with just a more local carbon footprint.
Yeah, excellent point, Doreen. And it sounds like North Glengarry is kind of a great hub for sort of this local food movement, farm to table type stuff. So lots of potential there for sure. All right, I think that was our last question that we were going to do the ranking on. So I might share my screen again. It's great to see everybody. When we stop sharing screen, all of our faces are here. Okay, so, okay. Can everybody see my PowerPoint again? Oh, or what screen are we seeing?
I think we're on the right one there when you think about other communities that are similar.
Yeah, okay. So as part of this exercise, we're interested in understanding when you think about other communities that might be kind of similar in nature to North Glengarry, so maybe also rural, you know, kind of near some urban centers, or, you know, what's kind of a flavor that you'd like to see in North Glengarry, or, you know, like, have you ever kind of been to a community within Ontario, Quebec, anywhere in Canada really, and thought, you know, this could be North Glengarry. This is so vibrant. This is so, you know, look at all the young families. Look at how great these businesses are, and I want this in my community. What are some of those success stories, and why? Let me pull up the chat again.
Well, I put it in the chat, Natasha, but I think what I've seen happen in Almonte is a great example. They're a little bit closer to Ottawa than we are, but they don't have, you know, they only have one urban market near them, really, whereas we have 2. And what's happened in Almonte with the revival of their Main Street, the additional new small entrepreneurial entities that have been created there, I think is an excellent example. And it's far enough that we don't really, I don't think we necessarily, quote, compete with them in that aspect, but that would be one. Closer, I think we can look to what's happened also, again, it's a smaller entity, but Vankleek Hill. Vankleek Hill has always been at kind of the cutting edge of bringing in more culture, more food, more local, more festivals and events, more music, etc. And I think they're a great local asset as well.
Yes, I've been to that annual Oktoberfest.
Yeah, Bose is, hey, that's a real asset for sure. It's a great.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thanks, Doreen. I'm seeing Marrickville as well. So lively arts community. I see the note about how the Bose Festival is not happening this year. Yeah, I think we're all, I'm sad a lot. I'm sad festivals are just not happening this year. They're a great part of the year for sure, that I think it'll be nice when we can all gather again.
One of the things I've seen is with Kemptville, one of the big issues here, I think, in North Glengarry, especially in Alexandria, are the way that the water rates are. And there's different ways of calculating it. And one of the things is that in Alexandria, it's 30 cubic meters for your basis. In Kemptville, what they do is they charge a lower basis, like a 5 cubic meter. But what they do is they charge per usage. So we charge above the 30 cubic meters. I think that if we actually, and it basically comes down to the same thing, but some folks, say, well, I didn't use my 30 cubic meters yet, I'm still paying for those 30 cubic meters. And that makes a lot of citizens very, sort of uncomfortable and upset. If you actually switch it from a lower cubic meters, and they still pay per use, you figure out what the use is, how much is included in your, in your 30 cubic meters, and, for that $100. And then after that, if you say, for example, somebody like somebody in Alexandria, goes south for the winter time, okay, and they go south for 3 months. Well, they still have to pay 3 times $100 for that 30 cubic meters that is not used. Okay. And, sometimes the township will say, well, that's the cost of actually bringing the line, the line to your home, but it's not $100 a month. It's not what it is. That should be taken into consideration, for example, that 5 cubic meters, but really a pay per use. And originally, I know you folks weren't here, but when the meter system came into Alexandria, originally, that was the promise, a pay per use system. That was the original plan, and it was never that. It sort of got switched to a 30 cubic meter, and that's been ambiguous for a lot of folks. Especially, say, for example, somebody who's renting a home and doesn't have somebody in there for a few months, they still have to pay that. So it's not necessarily the lower water rates, but just are recalculated so that it actually fits a pay per use.
Okay.
That would help attract, that would help, people sort of, once they're here, not be so, oh my gosh, my water rate is so expensive. Well, you pay for what you use,
All right, yeah, and I'm seeing kind of echoed in the chat that there's that the overall charges for water, hydro, and gas are high compared to some other towns. So, okay, that's something worth keeping in mind for sure as we kind of move towards more resident attraction. Any other thoughts on communities that you kind of see to be success stories that some lessons learned from somewhere else that you'd love to see?
I really have to echo Doreen's point. I mean, Vankleekeel is a great community that's been at the forefront of actually, it's not just the Bose Festival, it's everything. It's having event after event after event. I mean, just having that porch fest that they have, that's just brilliant. It's brilliant, it's having musicians just playing on porches everywhere. It's like, wow. It's, you know, there's just,
oh, that's
and
cool.
it doesn't cost much. It doesn't cost much.
Yeah.
So, you know, and musicians would love that.
Cool.
I'll just add to Alain's comment as well. What's nice in Vankleek Hill is so much of it is driven by the private sector. It's individuals. I mean, obviously he has now for a few years, but Phil Arbour was very instrumental in spearheading so many events that put Vankleek Hill on the map. And Sam, his partner now, she's continuing some of that. But there's also like Louise Spruill at the Review. She's sponsored so many things and very community oriented. So it doesn't always have to depend on the municipality. It's often driven by the private sector, and how do we engage those people? That is so important.
Okay. So I'm kind of thinking, how do we empower the private sector to engage with the community like that, I guess. Okay, great thoughts. I'm seeing a note in the chat about Stratford. My text box is all over the place on my PowerPoint here. So Stratford, small town, but because of music and art. So what the comparable communities that we've kind of mentioned here are telling me is that we really value kind of an arts and culture kind of flavor, and lots of community involvement. And festivals and events are important. That's what's really resonating with me from this conversation for sure.
And you know, just as much it's really funny. I don't know if you've been following the story of Montebello and Rockfest and whatnot, but you know, as much as the Montebello residents, you know, some of them are upset. Most of them actually embrace the fact that their town comes to life for a weekend, and it's just, you know, and it brings in all kinds of revenue, and you know, sort of, you know, positive vibes to the town. And as you're saying, all of these things are all drawn from, you know, from artistic endeavors. Everything is drawn, you know, just as I was saying, a very simple thing like a porch fest, which is, you know, seems very trivial, but again, as you say, is an arts driven thing that actually this was, you know, as Doreen said, you know, a partnership with the private sector, you know. So somebody would say, you know, you know, say for example, the North Gilling area would say, I'll pay half of what the band is charging, or the duo is charging in front. The private sector pays the other half, and boom, you have, you know, you can have this great festival going on throughout your whole town for next to nothing, and people walk. They get to know your town.
Okay, love it. So yeah, public-private partnerships are a thing that kind of helps that along, I think, for sure. That's what I'm hearing too. All right, I've got one more discussion question, and it's a fun one. And it's, what are 3 things that you would say to somebody from Ottawa or Montreal to convince them to move to North Glengarry? And then also, what are 3 things you wouldn't say? And I've got my eyes on the chat, or you can pipe in anytime, but you know, let's pretend that you run into someone who's 33, they live in Montreal, they've got a young family and a spouse, and they're saying, I can't handle the city anymore. You know, I went to Oktoberfest last year at Beau's, and gosh, what a beautiful area, and I wish I could live there. What would you say to them? Easy commute and relaxing atmosphere. Okay. affordable. Country lifestyle. Healthcare and hospital right in town. That's from Ann. Awesome. Okay, so I'm seeing a note in the chat about big town amenities. I like this comment from Dorian. Bilingual and no BS politics about language. That's good. I like that. Good schools. Okay. Wonderful. I'm going to include that there's a Tim. Great.
I see a comment that you're still close to booming cities.
I'm going to take that question out. We're on such a positive note right now. This one's flowing well. I like this. Oops. There we go. So there's a note in the chat. All these things are no good when there's no mobility and affordability, and you pay more in utilities, etc. So those are, I mean, those are interesting things to address with a development and marketing strategy. So things to keep in mind. A train station, that's important. So accessibility, once again, is big. Oh, I like that, Anne. The 200K you save on a house goes a long way toward affording a better life. Excellent. The hospital is a really big asset. That's awesome. People come here from Montreal area just because they don't have to wait so long for emergency care. Oh, I like this. People here don't really know it, but they're really living the Celtic culture because it's descendant to both Scottish, Irish, and French cultures. That's what makes this bilingual community work. Cool. And, oh. Cultures. Both very strong.
But that's one thing that North Glengarry has to really understand is that the Celtic culture also comes from Bretagne, and that's really important. That Celtic does not mean just Scottish. It's way more encompassing than at the moment is sort of pictured, because it's and if we celebrate this whole Celtic thing, because I'll give you an example in music. What in Scottish we'll say, well, play me a reel, and in French we'll say joue-moi un reel. It's the same structure of music. It comes from that same Celtic culture. So we really need to bank on this Celtic culture that we have, which is both French and English.
Great. That's awesome. Yeah, so very tangible sense of heritage there.
Yeah, fairly uniquely Celtic, sounds like.
Because the French culture is part of the Celtic culture. That's right.
Yeah. I don't know, it's actually funny, when I was getting on this Zoom call, I've got a Boran drum in the room behind me here, and I don't know if you can see it on Zoom, but it was funny. It was showing up in my Zoom shot, and I was just like, that's a bit odd. But if anybody asks, it's a Celtic drum, so it's on theme. And Anne says, most often it's people that come from outside North Glengarry that are the ones who open our eyes to how great this area is. I hear it all the time when I'm in Island Park or out in Maxville. Yeah, for sure. No, when you're in your own community, you kind of forget sometimes what makes it so special. And I'm seeing some comments about big franchises like Tim's, or these other big kind of boxy businesses. In Kleinburg, the big businesses are not allowed to build any new buildings, and it's so popular with people that they especially go there to get the town feel. Are we talking about Kleinburg in the GTA? Train station's a very good asset. Okay. Yeah. So we want to kind of keep the heritage and the small town feel, and that kind of flavor, I think, is what I'm getting from that comment, that the idea of big box stores is not the right thing, and heritage sells, from Elaine. It's true. And Tara says close proximity to large urban centers without having to deal with the stress of living in them and the traffic, noise, and costs. Awesome, Tara. And Kleinburg is still a small town, becoming part of GTA slowly, and still have that feel where as the housing there is getting quite expensive. Yes, so it is the same Kleinburg I'm familiar with. Yeah, so that's one of those examples of a community that they recognize the value of their heritage kind of assets. And the archives, new Macdonell House will add to the heritage aspect. More coffee shops with fresh baked goods. Okay, so it doesn't quite go on this slide, but I really appreciate the conversation of kind of what we want to maintain and what we would like to foster. So sounds like, more coffee shops with fresh baked goods as opposed to multinationals. Like we want to keep this entrepreneurial, very grassroots kind of flavor. Wonderful. All right. Well, does anybody have any other thoughts? Any ideas you want to pipe in with before we conclude? That's kind of it for the presentation, as we had sort of laid it out. But jump in. Again, we are doing one-on-one interviews, so if anybody wants to chat one-on-one, feel free, and we'll have a conversation on the phone. The next steps on this project are we'll be doing a couple more workshops a little bit later in the process, hopefully when we can socially distance but meet in person with the business community, and a couple more other groups of people. So that's coming down the pipeline. Yeah, feel free to reach out. This is a fun project. We're sad that we can't be in North Glengarry with you. We're excited to get out of our houses and kind of into the beautiful countryside that is North Glengarry. So hopefully it's safe in the next few months. I'd also I'd like to thank Anne for coordinating this with us. This has been great, and we're excited to keep talking to people in the community and keep gathering this information. Once again, we do have a survey open, and if you need the link, it'll likely be on the Facebook page. I know Anne at the township has it, so we'll hopefully get lots more feedback on that survey. Yeah, this has been fun. Simon, did you want to hop in with any thoughts?
I don't think so. I think we've got some really good stuff from today, though. So thanks for everybody being so involved. And yeah, it sounds like a really special place.
sorry. Thank you to both of you for manning this workshop today. If anyone thinks of anything after the fact, after the workshop, please feel free to send those comments to me. Again, if you think of someone that should be on our one-on-one interview list, please send me that information. And we'll definitely be keeping the community abreast of what's happening with this strategy. So stay tuned, there's more to come.
Awesome. Okay, again, thanks so much for all your thoughts today. This has been a fun conversation.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.